So, is Kundalini Yoga black magic? Well, that's a very interesting thing. Because if you look at things, you can say like, is it dark? No, it's not part of the dark cosmos at all. Because Kundalini Yoga is helping to stimulate powers, bring forth powers. It is creating growth, it is creating movement. So it is very opposed to the dark cosmos. Then you can ask, is it light? And there it becomes a little bit tricky. Because yes, it does create movement, but it doesn't necessarily create improvement. And the light side wants to improve things, not just chaotically manifest stuff. And to look more closely, you have to look at what is the guiding principle. And if you look at the guiding principle, you also get to look at what is basically also the purpose of the person and what is happening to that person if they use it. And here it becomes rather hard, because in a light setting you would have a yogi or a yogini who is studying with the master. They start yoga and the master helps them to get rid of all their attachment, helps them rid of all their blockages, helps them to purify their ego and to get set firmly on a path of spiritual development and following the yamas and the niyamas. So once this is done and the person starts to practice Kundalini Yoga or something else and they develop siddhis, well, that is all good and nice, but ultimately any power, any talent, any experience is irrelevant, because the only purpose is evolution, movement forward. And any attachment to any power or experience is by itself halting that evolution, halting that movement. So Kundalini Yoga, in its perfect sense, is instead of being on a stop train which halts every few kilometers, you get on the intercity and it goes much more faster, much more quicker, and you pass more territory in a shorter time. So this is very much the ideal of yoga, to have a master purify you, guide you when you're ready. You are introduced to Kundalini practices to accelerate your growth. If we look at how things are happening in practice, then we see that people are starting Kundalini Yoga without having the proper preparation and often still having an ego or even being controlled by that ego. We also see that the desire, which is in a way bringing many people to Kundalini Yoga, is a desire for experiences or a desire for power, which are in a way side effects of the Kundalini Yoga path. So ultimately people start taking it for the side effects rather than for the purpose. So it's very similar to drug abuse. So for instance, people create opium or morphine so that if you're in terrible pain or you've had an operation, to stay calm, to relax, to heal better, not to suffer and stress so much, so you can be a better person. But people like the feeling of morphine, they like the feeling of opium, the rush. It gives them the feeling, it gives them the relaxation, and they become addicts. And so in the same way, in my personal opinion, most people who practice Kundalini Yoga, they're unfortunately Kundalini Yoga addicts rather than Kundalini Yoga users. Another part is also very much the laws, because as you know, this is a very tricky thing in yoga, because one of the strictures of the yogic path is non-violence. There should be no violence. Minimize all violence. And one of the forms of violence are laws, rules and regulations. And usually yoga is full of them. So for a non-violent path there is an awful lot of violence. The reason that there is so much in the form of rules and regulations is because most people are not ready. They start working with things and they need a very explicit manual to prevent them from harming themselves. Unfortunately, by having a manual which is very explicit and very restrictive, also a lot of the purpose and positive effects of the yoga itself become lost, because people learn by experimenting, learn by feeling, learn by following their intuition, learn by exploration, by doing things wrong, doing things right, and then they slowly build up their karma. If you have a perfect protocol, then you act perfectly, but you're also just a machine. You're no longer a growing, spiritual, evolving being. And in that, too much rules make something very, very dark, because your spirit can no longer evolve, can no longer grow. So, if you ask more specifically about Yogi Bhajan, no. No, it is not dark. And the reason I say that is because of the method of teaching. Yogi Bhajan used to sit down and do something. And the people who were able to would energetically join with him, and they would experience what he was experiencing. So his experiences were directly transferred to his students. And by having experience, they could also do things, or they would know what it should feel like if you do it well. And they could compare their own experiences with the experiences which Yogi Bhajan gave them. And I think that this is a very beautiful and very correct and also very light way of teaching. So, if you're talking about Yogi Bhajan's teaching of yoga, I think it's a light path. If you're looking at how people are practicing it, it is not that light. But this is more due to the lack of quality in the teacher than to the lack of quality of the teaching itself. It is like any law, can be applied in a beneficial way or in a harmful way. And often lack of understanding and desire of control makes people very fundamentalist. While a certain amount of fundamentalism is necessary to act as a preservative, it also makes things completely stagnant and therefore by definition dark. I think that ultimately the focus should be that the impulse of the master is transferred. And if you look at the ultimate master of yoga, you would go to the god Shiva. He is the master. And then you have the people we call masters, who are disciples of Shiva and who have become very good students of Shiva, like Yogi Bhajan. And ultimately, Yogi Bhajan is an imperfect tool for the perfect impulse of Shiva. And students of Yogi Bhajan, in the most part, are imperfect tools of Yogi Bhajan. So ultimately your goal is to start evolving. So first you bring forward the impulse of your own master until you have found your own way, your own method, your own style. Then you no longer need to follow blindly. Then you can start to improvise, and then you can look for higher and higher masters to inspire you, to lead you, to compare yourself with, or to. And personally, I think if you would work with Yogi Bhajan, that would be a beneficial thing. I think that would be a good thing. Also, if you want to work with Shiva, I also think that would be a good thing. Durga, I wouldn't advise in this case. But Shiva, yes. Saraswati also has a very strong yogic impulse, also very useful to work with. Kali is also a possibility to work with. So there's also feminine powers you can turn to move yogic impulses and to be inspired in what you should teach, what you should transfer, and also furthering your own growth on the yogic path. And they can tell you whether you should or should not use the Kundalini energy, because Kundalini energy is just one small fragment of the yogic path, which encompasses hundreds of energies, and the Kundalini is only one of them. So don't focus too much on just one element, I would say. Yes, the nice thing about Kali is also that unlike Shiva, who's really manifested often more as a destructive than as a creative force, although he is seen as the master of all, he's seen mostly as the liberator. Kali also has that same aspect, but she also has a much more creative role of having a mothered life, when being the mother of the universe, as well as the one who liberates people from it. So it is much more, you could say, a caring view of the universe compared to the view of Shiva, which is a little bit more distant, a little bit more intellectual. So yeah, personally I prefer Kali over Shiva, also because Kali is less involved with the lower elements of the cosmos. Because Shiva, amongst other things, he is also the lord of the demons, the king of the demons. And personally, I don't have that good experiences with demons. But this is my personal issue, because I'm not completely pure and enlightened and one with the cosmos yet. So that's his lesson to me, but I'm still struggling with it, and it makes me back off a little bit of Shiva himself, even though he's just trying to teach me by his demons. In a way, Kali is very much about ascension, and the process of ascension is very much also one of balance, of different, all parts of your being serving each other, cooperating with each other. So it's very much ascension through harmony, and so it is not so much the very cold detachment, but it is very much seeing all the illusions you also create in yourself, not fighting them, not ridding yourself of them, but realization of them, and allowing your own illusions and conceptions and attachments to play their part without harming or blocking your spirit. So this is very much a difference, in which Kali is indeed a little bit more gentle or compassionate compared to Shiva. Yes, she can make you aware of your attachments. This is one of her powers, but at least in my experiences, but also the experience I saw for others, it is much more about harmony first, awareness second, I would say. Because awareness if you're aware of something but you don't know how to respond to something, then the response can become harmful. And you need to be in a state where your awareness will be helpful, will help you to grow, to realize more, to evolve more. And then you're ready. And this is very much the path of Kali, I feel. Yes, harmony first. This is also why in a way, Kali is also more connected to the tantric side of yoga, which is also, well, Kundalini is of course also a tantric practice. So it's much more about awakening energies, allowing them to play their place, and enriching your own inner world, rather than cutting things out, which some followers of Shiva do, but it's not Shiva himself, of course.